Alrighty, so part 2 of camp clearing mechanics. We were just done with describing the different states the blue buff can attain, right? It could be doing nothing, it could be walking back because it dropped courage, it can channel an auto attack, then launch it, then it can move, and while it's moving it could be recharging an auto attack or have one available. Those are two states that kind of don't matter, right? So they're kind of one in the same state because it doesn't make any difference for its behavior. And then there's standing still. And then standing still, it could be channeling an auto attack, but we now have a separate behavior when it's not channeling. So we gotta state that as a separate state. We gotta mention that as being a different state the blue buff can have. Let's make that sentence a little bit less hairy. Alright. So, during the auto attack channel, this is the blue, right? Now, what do we want to do? This is going to convert the exact same way for each and every camp in the entire game. So, and every champion in the entire game. So, this is going to be, as you can see, there's nothing in here that doesn't apply to wolves. Wolves could be channeling an auto, launching it, blah, 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 blah. Right. So, during the auto attack channel, it makes, essentially, there's a very small time frame in which you can move away. So let's say Xin Zhao can attack the blue buff and loop back before it gets hit. So that is possible. It's almost impossible, but it is possible. So don't try that in your ranked games. I would say try it in practice tool if you want to, see how far you get, but it's not going to be very fruitful, I can promise you that. Alright, anyway. So while it's doing this, there's a very small time frame where you can maybe do something, but usually during these two, especially as soon as it's actually launching the auto attack, you want to stand still and use your abilities or resources. Let's not say that word. Alright, not now anyway. So anyway, stand still and use your abilities. Makes sense, right? And then you could say, well, you can still move around a little bit, but the problem is a lot of people do that, and that is why they can't watch camps and still kite it. If you create this, because of this, this requires no actions. This requires no actions. So in a real game, this is going to give you the time for observations. Very important. If this were a 500 APM strat, how the hell are you going to do this in a real game where you need to look at what's happening? You have to look at what's happening. Create that little moment of not doing anything. Because it's optimal. You're not trading it off against anything. It's optimal behavior. You're not gaining anything by moving. So, and then sometimes, let's say for example, you're over here. Your maximum auto range is this, but the blue buff is over here. Then you can move back a little bit in your preferred direction towards the next camp or whatever path you're taking at that moment, and make sure that you're at the edge. So that would be the alternative, right? If you have somewhere to move, obviously you can do it. Don't need permission from me, right? Alright, so after that, so you got the auto attack channel, and then you got the moment afterwards where he's just recharging an auto attack. And you want to figure out sometimes, so then he gets another auto attack. And before this time, before a certain time where he starts channeling again, you want to already have finished moving and stand still and auto attack, right? And that's just what kind of pattern you can do before this happens is just different for every camp, and you can just trial and error it because there's only so many options. First one is 1-4-0. You auto attack it, and before the enemy attacks you, you're already moving backwards. This is possible on the blue, but it's impossibly hard. Unless it's the first auto attack. The reason we're not using the auto into moving back on the first auto attack is because we have E up. So we want to use our resources rather than kiting it more. And that is mainly because we're going to run out of space while kiting anyway. We have margins of error because space is not we're constrained essentially by our by the courage bar. there was no courage bar, then I think this pattern would be very good, especially at the start, rather than using our E straight away. But the pattern doesn't exist, so we're not going to use that. We are constrained by how far away we can move from the camp, right? So this one is a little questionable for that reason. You want to prioritize using your resources over this pattern. If you have no resources up, you can use it. If you have a little bit of space remaining, especially once you leave this courage bar, if you can get a 1 for 0 here, perfect. That is actually a big time saver. Saves like half a second. If you do that twice for every buff, for example, that's 1 second right there in the pocket. How much is 1 second worth? About 8 gold. It's half a caster minion. Again, you know, it's just the little things. This snowballs. Let's say you got an interest rate of 10% every minute. Then after 10 minutes, you got like, what is it? You got way more gold, right? You got after 7 times you doubled it. So let's say after 14 minutes you doubled it twice, so you got 32 gold lead. After 21 minutes, that's a 64 gold. So this can, if you do this in your very early clear, then especially if you're struggling for time to get somewhere for a slow push, this can snowball the entire game, or else it can just win you a little bit of economy. So the calculations I just showed you were just for normal economy, not assuming there's a big event coming up that you need to be quick for in order to reach it. Alright, anyway, that's just a little bit of context. It's not actually going to change your immediate gameplay. Here, this is just trial and error. How do you attack the little wolves versus the big wolves? My approach is very simple. It's very easy to kite. When you got all these auto attacks, you can just select which one has just auto attacked, and you know which one's going to stand still. If you move back while one of them is autoing you and the other one isn't, you can just move back and auto the other one that's still chasing you. So it makes kiting easier. You have a lot of space. Wolves is one of the only camps where you need that mechanism to get as far into the lane as possible, because they're so fast, right? So once they leave the courage bar, you want to move into the center of the lane very fast and get a lot of distance, right? So you want to be efficient with your auto spacing, which usually isn't a constraint because you run out of space anyway, so who cares about your auto spacing? You just want to make sure you hit your auto as soon as possible on most of the camps, right? So it's space versus time. This one space is a big deal. That's why I leave these little ones up. And make sure that you don't overkill them. So you use your E to kill them off whenever you can, right? So just like that. And with 2:11 to 12, we're in the brush. Now let's compare that. Oh, looks like overkill to me. You see that? That's overkill. So you could have killed that with one less auto attack if you essentially don't use any Qs on the small ones and just use your first and second auto attack of your passive on the little ones. Those two rules. So just use the first and second auto attack. No Q, no passive strike on the little ones. It allows you to kite until this space over here. You would still be clearing the camp, which means all this distance that you just spent walking, you'll be auto-attacking, auto-attack, auto-attack. You're using a resource. Essentially, you're using more resources in total during your clear that way, right? So you got to think about it from the fundamentals of the game. You got to think about resources and how you're using them, right? Auto-attacks are a resource. If you can use them for a longer amount of distance, then you're using them for a larger amount of time, right? So you're gaining, essentially every auto attack you do is gold earned on the camp, right? So you're essentially, you could say you're accumulating gold for a larger amount of time. Now you have more cooldown time in between these camps where you're not collecting gold. That's the fundamental principle behind kiting it. So if you had an AI and you wanted to teach it why do we really do all these little mechanics? It's really about using resources over time. Again, just a little bit of context. I like giving out as much context before we actually go into the nitty gritty, and I just say auto attack, move back, auto attack, move back. You know, this one is actually one where it's a little bit of racing. If you're good at racing, you're good at speed running, then you're good at League of Legends in the jungle. Alright, so we're going to continue the last part in part 3. Just go over a little bit of details and round things up. I'll see you there.